In our homeschool, we talk about transcendentals a lot. So truth, goodness, beauty. They're termed transcendentals because they transcend culture, time periods, nations. Each culture, humanity itself, is drawn to truth, goodness, and beauty. So Jonathan Edwards said that beauty should be the foundation from which our theology flows, not merely a consolation. We remember that theology means thinking about God, what we think about God, how we think about God. Okay, it's learning about God. It's the knowledge about God. That's theology. So this is this whole idea of beauty first and our theology flowing out of that. It's difficult for those of us who are brought up in a postmodern view in this Western culture. But if we go back to the age before the age of reason, and before the Enlightenment, we see ancient peoples not only viewed God as beautiful, but they could scarcely fathom beauty that didn't relate somehow to God. I'm gonna fix this real quick. But before the Enlightenment, beauty was considered sacred. It wasn't until about 1735 that we started divorcing beauty into subcategories. We started trying to define it and to categorize it and organize it, right? This is the beginning of the aesthetics movement. And then up until the Italian Renaissance, the dominant theme of art was sacred. Why? Because our ancestors understood that beauty is bound up in the sacred. Beauty is also an important part of who God is. If our idea of beauty is limited to aesthetics, then we are simply limiting ourselves and our understanding of God. The ancients often described God as other out of reverence for him. It alluded to the fact that he was supreme, indescribable. It wasn't until the Middle Ages when we started using words like transcendence and immanence to describe God. The Age of Reason tried to define God. The Age of Enlightenment, with the introduction and classification of beauty, is a science of aesthetics, with the end result being that once we defined beauty, we cut it off from its source, which is God. Okay, so beauty is now a limited concept. We find ourselves closed in instead of an expansion. The problem with this is God is inherently beautiful. Psalm 27, 4-5. Creation testifies to beauty, pointing us to God. Psalm 19. Our culture, with the rise of postmodernism, has bought the idea that truth is subjective and malleable and changeable, subject to our whims or our feelings, worse than the whims. Christians rightly often push back against this postmodern idea of malleable truth, but if we're pushing against the idea of malleable truth and standing on truth as corresponding with reality, that's a good thing. But we cannot do it at the expense of beauty. Truth, beauty, and goodness go together. They work together, okay? So we can't just ignore beauty because it's hard to define or explain or wrap our minds around the concept or a different way of thinking than how we're used to thinking about it. We were never intended to see beauty as merely aesthetics. We are never meant to divorce beauty from its source, from God itself, his attributes, and his presence. Okay, and also, when did God ever reduce his creation to mere facts, right? Creation, when you look outside, you see beauty, you don't see data. When you read his word, it's not just a textbook full of graphs. It's primarily story driven, right? And why is it story driven? Because story in itself is beautiful. Now, the stories are true, so we have truth in there, but it's not divorced from the reality of beauty. Okay, Matthew 6:23-34, when Jesus talks about the flowers of the field and how God creates them more beautiful, they're arranged more beautifully than Solomon. If beauty doesn't matter as much as truth, why did God bother to make creation so beautiful in its variety? And obviously, I'm not advocating for pantheism here, but we can see beauty in creation to enjoy it, yes, but also to lead us to him. We are less than a week out from Christmas right now, so when we celebrate God coming in the flesh in human form. So we know Isaiah 53 tells us Jesus wasn't attractive or beautiful, so then what do we do with that? If God is beauty, if God is the definition of beauty, if his presence is beautiful, but he came in a form that wasn't beautiful, why? Why would he take on a form that's not beautiful? I think maybe it's the same reason that he hid diamonds and copper and golds and hills and mountains and caves for us to discover. There's treasure if we're willing to dig for it. Christ is our ultimate treasure, and he was glory incarnate, clothed in, scripture plainly tells us, a rather uninspiring body. I'm wondering if that's just one more aspect of his sacrifice, the supremely beautiful, identifying himself with the lowly and the humble, the needy and the poor. And finally, God is not content to just be beautiful himself. He is also making us beautiful through that process of sanctification. And one day we will be clothed in beauty. It will be part of our eternal identity. Psalm 132 says we are adorned with salvation. And adorned is that idea of putting on something beautiful, putting on some beautiful clothes or raiment or jewelry. We're going to put on that salvation like our clothing. So if these last few days of Christmas have you singing with gusto about Emmanuel, God with us, and hark the herald angels sing, and all of that, I want you to think about, how does beauty enhance that idea? The idea of beauty enhance what you're already feeling and thinking about this Christmas. And if you're not particularly happy right now or joyful, I want you to think about the woman who broke the perfume, the alabaster jar, on Jesus's feet. And what did he say to her? Well, actually said to the disciples, leave her alone. What she's done for me is a beautiful thing. So that kind of reminds me that when we've come to the end of ourselves, when we are broken and humble, when we're at the end of our rope and we invite Christ in us, he is going to make even the broken parts, even the parts where we are just at the end of ourselves, where we're just so done, he's going to make those beautiful in his time too. All right, and then our last reminder is Isaiah 61:3 that talks about beauty for ashes.